Okay, so let's talk about Avengers Endgame and Tenet. You've got two huge movies, right? Both with time machines, and both with this giant contradiction at their core. They both seem to suggest that even with all that power to travel through time, you can't actually change a thing. So what's the point? Let's untangle this.
So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? It's the puzzle at the heart of both of these movies. They give our heroes this incredible power, only to say, nope, you can't actually change history. So why even bother? To really get it, we've got to start with the one big rule. The one rule that every single time travel story either has to follow or find a really clever way to break.
You know, any story that even thinks about time travel, whether it's a book, a movie, whatever, it immediately runs headfirst into this massive logical brick wall. It's a concept so fundamental, it gets a name that sounds like it came straight out of a philosophy class. And here it is, the grandfather paradox. And look, the logic is, well, it's pretty much ironclad. Think about it. If you go back and, take out your grandpa before he meets your grandma, then you're never born. But if you were never born, then who went back in time in the first place? See, it's this perfect, impossible loop that would just make reality crash.
And this whole thing is way bigger than just your family tree, by the way. Let's say you go back in time to stop, the COVID-19 pandemic, and you actually succeed. Great, right? Well, not really. Because if the pandemic never happened, then the future you came from never had a reason to send you back to stop it. Boom. You've just erased the entire reason for your trip. You see, changing the past completely breaks the future that created you.
Okay, so if that's the unbreakable rule, how in the world do you tell a time travel story? Well, Avengers Endgame has a really clever and honestly a huge solution. They don't try to break the rule, they just change the entire game. So here's how the Avengers do it. They basically say, what if we create brand new realities? When they travel to the past, they're not actually changing their own history. Nope. Instead, any big change they make just splits off and creates a whole new branching timeline. So their actions still have consequences, just not for them. It's for that new reality. Their own timeline is safe and sound. They were really just trying to borrow the Infinity Stones and then get out of there. And what's cool is, this idea is actually inspired by a real physics theory, the many worlds interpretation. All right, so where Endgame goes wide, expanding out into all these infinite new worlds, Tenet does the complete opposite. It gets way more, mind-bending is the word for it. It locks its one single reality into this inescapable loop. So Tenet runs on something called a causal loop. And this idea, which was talked about by a scientist named Igor Novikov, basically says that paradoxes just can't happen. The universe won't allow it. So any time travel event has to be self-consistent. It has to form this perfect closed loop where the effect is also its own cause. Okay, I know that sounds complicated, so let's break it down with a simple analogy. Picture a billiard ball, right? It's rolling towards a time machine. But just before it goes in, its future self pops out of the machine and hits the past ball, knocking it right into the machine. You get it? The collision, the effect, is the very thing that causes the event in the first place. The loop is sealed. It's totally consistent, and you can't break it. That ball was always going to get knocked into the machine by itself. So let's put these two ideas side by side to really see the difference. On one hand, you have Endgame with its multiverse theory. You change the past, you just create a new timeline. Paradox avoided. Then you have Tenet with its causal loop. Here, the past is set in stone, because anything you try to do to change it was always part of what happened. One solution branches reality out, the other locks it down. But, and this is where it gets really weird, Tenet's super elegant solution to the grandfather paradox, it actually creates a whole new problem. An even stranger, more haunting paradox. And that brings us to this question. If something only exists inside of a loop, where did it come from? Like, in the first place? If events and objects are just endlessly causing themselves, what was the original spark? Where's the beginning? This is what's known as the bootstrap paradox. And it's all about an object, or even just a piece of information, that has no origin point. It was never created. It's just caught in this time loop, getting passed from the future to the past, and then from the past right back to the future, forever and ever. It's an idea that never had a first thinker, or a song that was never actually composed. Okay, here's the classic example to wrap your head around this. Imagine you're a time traveler, and you go back to meet your all-time favorite author, and you bring with you a copy of their masterpiece, a book they haven't written yet. They see it, get inspired, and just copy it word for word and publish it. So my question to you is, who actually wrote the book? It wasn't you, and it wasn't them. The book just is. It has no origin. And get this, here's a really fascinating little detail. That scientist we mentioned, Novikov, he actually came up with a term for this kind of originless information. He called it Jinn, which is inspired by the Quranic term for these unseen, mysterious beings, information that just exists with no creator. And this brings us full circle, right back to the movie. Because this isn't just some abstract thought experiment in Tenet. It is the entire foundation of the organization itself. The protagonist, we know he's going to found Tenet in the future, but he only gets involved in the first place because the organization already exists to recruit him in his present. The organization and its hero are stuck in their very own bootstrap paradox. So, what's the big takeaway from all this? If everything is just locked in this self-correcting, originless loop, what does that mean for things like free will?
Well, in the world of Tenet, it means that destiny is very, very real, and it is absolutely unbreakable. You simply cannot change the past because any move you make to try and change it was always a part of that past to begin with. You're not the one writing your story. You're more like an actor, just playing a role in a script that's already been finished and is just going to be replayed over and over again.
It all boils down to that central, haunting line from the film. It's not just a character giving up. It's a fundamental law of nature in their universe. There is no other way things could have happened. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. The Avengers, they get to create infinite new futures, but Tenet gives us a universe where the script is already written and locked in. So if you found yourself trapped inside one of those causal loops, would you really be making choices? Or would you just be reading your lines? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.